You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing with your host, Conor Byrne.
Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing. I'm your host, Conor Byrne. And of course, this is the podcast where you'll hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Of course, if you're enjoying these episodes, please do rate and review them. It really helps us reach an even bigger community of engaged marketers just like you. And as you know, our sponsorship kit for 2024 is now available. We're looking for brands, or agencies or organizations to partner with us. And especially at the moment, we're organising a series of events around the Cannes Festival. We're going to be at Cannes this year and are looking for people to partner with us there. So if you're interested in becoming an exclusive partner along with a great selection of brands, please get in touch with us. That's what I call marketing.com. Well, on to today's episodes. We're out and about again. Today in Poddle Audio Studios, where Dee Reddy has handed over the mic to some leaders in the media landscape in Ireland to talk about the challenges and opportunities of traditional media, and air quotes there, in 2024. So I have brought together the best in the business to help this discussion today around traditional media channels. So first up, we have Jill McGrath. Jill has been CEO of TAM Ireland since 2012 and has over 30 years experience in media marketing industry, working across the entire spectrum. Actually, Jill's going to talk about everything because she's worked in ad agencies, press, radio, online, and now TV. Next, we have Aoibhinn Lennon, who's director of the Outdoor Media Association. Aoibhinn has 17 years of advertising experience in Ireland and Australia, and for the last couple of months has been leading the Outdoor Media Association to help elevate outdoor media in Ireland. Next, we have Cassie Joyce, is agency and client director with Pearl and Dean Ireland, where she's worked for over 20 years before falling in love with cinema advertising. She worked at Checkout, Food and Wine magazine, and with EMAP in the UK. And finally, we have Ciarán Cunningham, who has over 30 years of experience working in media. He is CEO of Radio Centre Ireland, the body established by RTE and Independent Broadcasters of Ireland to promote audio as a marketing medium. And previously, Ciarán worked in every media agency going, Cara, Dentsu, Initiative, and All Ireland Media. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining me to talk about the media landscape. And it's great to have kind of the representation of the organising bodies for some of the platforms. Now, if you've listened to the podcast, you'll know I'm a fan of some of these channels that we're going to talk about today. I've talked to Nils Leonard and Karen Nelson-Field about out of home and cinema. I've talked to Peter Field and Paul Feldwick about TV and radio. And I've managed to use all of them in my career, sometimes to, varying degrees of success. But the fact of the matter is it's a challenging landscape. And looking at media data where global advertising spend is going to surpass 1 trillion for the first time in 2024, it's going to be up 8.2%. But it says the content media owners are forecast to only receive 27.2% of all global ad investment in 2024. And that's down from 71% a decade ago. Now, lots have changed. There's lots of big numbers there. Success for the platforms, according to WARC, will be about winning share of budgets from those with potentially similar propositions. So we could probably sit here all day and list all the challenges, but they are big challenges. I'd love to get your views on how you're kind of facing the challenges. Jill, what's your view on the challenges facing some of the traditional media outlets?
Yeah, I do. I'm glad you put it in inverted commas for traditional media, because I think we have all allowed that term to exist. And yet, all of us sitting at this table are very much involved in digital. Our mediums are digital mediums. They have evolved with the changing landscape of media. So yes, there's an awful lot of challenges for the more longer standing media, shall we say. And that comes, I suppose, within the media itself and within each sector, where we're seeing more and more fragmentation, bigger and bigger competition within our own sectors, and then, of course, with the broader media market. So, yeah, the challenge is really, I suppose, the spread of choice for the marketeers and the spread of choice for the consumers. So it's kind of capturing that, being able to understand the behaviour of the audiences and how they negotiate all of these different platforms in their way. They still only have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah,
And,
we haven't managed
you know,
to extend the day.
Yeah,
our
we haven't
existence.
managed to do that yet.
AI might.
Yeah,
but-
if you know how, let us know.
Ciarán, did those numbers startle you? You know, the going from 71% a decade ago to 27% now, and kind of the share of the budgets.
No, because I think it's well known. Everybody knows those figures. I think it's slightly better in Ireland. I think, again, I don't know what the term is, maybe broadcast media rather than traditional. So TV, outdoor, cinema, audio represents like 38% of the market of total revenue in Ireland. So it's a little bit better. But no, it doesn't surprise me. We all know what's happened over the past 20 years. I do think there's a kind of a counter trend at the moment. I do think based on all the work such as Mark Ritson and Peter Field and Les Binnett, I think a lot of advertisers are reevaluating their media channel strategy and looking at broadcast media again to do a lot of the things that the likes of those, likes of Mark or Peter Field have said about, long-term brand building and wide reach that's required. So I think there's been a bit of a change and a bit of a counter trend. But yeah, it's obviously changed dramatically. I think 20 years ago, the media represented in this podcast represented 96% of the share of total advertising spend. And obviously that's down to mid-30s. So it has changed dramatically, no doubt.
Yeah, and I think through that period, I mean, we've all been kind of in agencies and we've seen kind of the narrative that Channel X is dead. I mean, certainly TV has long been dead, right? Radio's had its day, cinema was done. Cassie, when you look at this and the numbers, are from your perspective, are there kind of misconceptions that you think that are out there that need to be broken?
Yeah, I do think so. I think there is this idea that, like it goes back to, video has killed cinema. Streaming is killing cinema. All of these things along the way. And I think there's a lot of misconception. I think particularly maybe in agencies among younger planners that are so focused on digital that they're not actually thinking about what we would say is traditional media or established media because they're so focused on that area. I mean, I even spoke to someone recently. She was like, "Oh yeah, I kind of didn't think about cinema, but I was at the cinema the other night." Do you know? And you're going, and you saw the ads. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I saw the ads." So I think we're kind of breaking back a little bit, and I do think there is a sway back among clients and agencies to realise, yes, I mean, digital. I don't think it's ever going to go back to not being a huge part of the media spend. But at the same time, I think people are starting to realise, okay, they're doing a really good job and it's a really important part of what we do. But that other media can actually bring a lot of other things that maybe digital can't in a lot of ways. And whether that's the trust that you have about, what you're actually running with, what the content is it the right fit, is it the right environment, that kind of thing, I think is starting to become a bit more important again, that people are maybe thinking a bit more about we need to include other media as well. It's not just all this rush towards digital. It's not going to solve every problem. It's not going to deliver what we need. And I think that there is that thing about the reach, but also as you've spoken about yourself, about that attentive reach now, that, it's all very well having great analytics for opportunities to see, but if people aren't paying attention, it doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, I do think there's still challenges there, but I think there is a bit of a sea change as well in kind of reevaluating what we're doing.
Yeah, and out of home, Cassie mentioned trust there, Aoibhinn.
Yeah.
Out of home, I've definitely seen that has a great ability to kind of make a small brand feel big and to deliver trust and credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it's in the public domain, I think that people are more likely to trust the advertising that they see when they're out and about. And obviously, we see the advocacy that you need in out-of-home advertising and the trust that's built and what that delivers for brands, especially when we're looking at emotional brands and all of the research that's being done around that can be delivered through trust.
When I had Nils Leonard on, and he's a huge fan of out of home, and you can see even the work they've done recently for B&Q in the UK. But he almost says like they try start with what's the out of home going to be, which is kind of a very interesting place for an agency or for creative. It used to be probably what was the big idea for TV, and maybe that's because it was never what's the big idea for digital. I don't think that's happened yet, but I found that an interesting kind of perspective that he had.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of going back to that point of traditional media and where out of home may have been seen previously as being an addition to whether it be, TV or audio, now is also being seen as a standalone. And as you said, the creative being developed from the start, which is brilliant to see that it's going back to that place.
It was also seen, I think, and maybe, I don't know if this has changed, but it was seen as expensive and a costly luxury, I think. Has that changed?
It has changed, and due to many factors. So obviously the mix in format. So there's its own fragmentation within out of home, which is a benefit, when you look at the digital formats that we have now, but also the sustainability piece. So that brings back in recycled paper. There's, so much more that we can do in terms of production and kind of suit brands' needs in the size of the budget that they have. So, yeah.
Yeah, and digital platform.
Yeah, exactly.
We've kind of mentioned the fragmentation, and there's no doubt the whole market is completely fragmented. Even within each of the channels you look at and you're kind of responsible for, there is more fragmentation. Maybe less so, Cassie, in cinema as kind of a standalone, but I think the idea of how we view cinema or how kind of we view those experiences has changed slightly with at-home viewing.
Yeah, there has been quite a change, particularly because of COVID, that there was a whole change towards, we couldn't go to the cinema, we couldn't do that, and would people go back? But I think what we recognised is, actually the very people who are consuming a lot of streaming services and doing all that are actually the heavy cinema goers as well. So I think, I think it's people have a great demand for product and a great demand for entertainment. And I suppose in the sense of where cinema fits in, because it isn't fragmented as such, but I think it almost fits in almost like another TV station as well. It's part of that audiovisual plan that you really need to include cinema in as well, because it delivers a certain type of person that you might not get on other media. And I think across the board, that's why it's important that the advertisers have a good mix of the traditional or the digital medium. I don't know what
we're going to find a new word for this.
Yeah,
where's ChatGPT?
But I think that's all part of it, isn't it? Is that you're having optimizing your mix across lots of different media. And trying to think of different ways of combining them, because we all have our USPs and the different things that we can bring to the campaign. So I suppose it's not being lazy and just going with, this is what we've always done. It's looking at where do we put them all together so that we're reaching people in lots of different ways.
But again, kind of maybe the fragmentation of the market. I think part of the challenge probably, and we've touched a little bit here, is measurement and attribution. Digital obviously kind of was like, we can measure everything. It's the most measurable thing. Now, obviously, the likes of Augustine Fu would largely disagree with that. We'll get him on this podcast someday to talk about that. But around the measurement piece, I'd love to kind of see where your kind of heads are at in terms of, are we measuring these channels in the right way, or are we doing enough? Ciarán, what's your view from the radio perspective?
I think we can do more, and I think we are doing more. I think collectively we are doing more. So I think, and it goes back to that digital ecosystem, I think everybody realizes, it paints a very simplistic view. You have a digital which provides lots of metrics, but it only delivers that kind of last click experience.
Yeah.
When you know what's really happening, there's a mix of touch points that affect people, and eventually they may create an action that delivers a digital footprint. I think when you look at attribution, you can look at offline and online attribution. There's loads of techniques out there that allow you to measure both offline and online attribution. Specifically when it comes to audio, we've invested in that area. So we had a piece of research last year. We partnered with Sky. We got all their analytics, and they gave us all their analytics, which was very nice of them. Yeah. And we were able to look at the impact of live radio on website traffic. And one interesting thing that came out of it was, because audio is consumed passively, because you could be driving or cooking or minding children, that there was a huge response, but it was slightly delayed, so it wasn't immediate. Actually, like TV is mainly more immediate. I would say people are sitting on a couch, potentially watching a TV in a traditional way, and will go online. Maybe can't do that with audio. So that was one piece of research we did. And it actually was incredible that it showed a direct relationship between radio activity and website traffic, but over a slightly delayed period. And then actually we had a webinar today, and we are looking at more upper funnel metrics in terms of consideration, awareness, and those type of metrics, and looking at specific campaigns and how that particular campaign had a direct impact on those kind of upper funnel metrics. And I think also what brands are increasingly doing is looking at a broader ecosystem and looking at attribution in a different way, because what they can do is look at their airtime or whatever media they're using and combine that with metrics like footfall, website traffic, temperature, time of day. There's lots of areas that they can bring in a much more sophisticated view of the impact of media on their objectives, purchasing behavior, etc.
And just curious, for that work with Sky, had they everything else off and it was just radio, or how were they able to parse out the different impact of radio on?
No, they had, because the nature of brand, they had millions of things on.
I was going to say, knowing Sky, they're never off anywhere.
They're never off anywhere. But there was a very specific campaign which had a very specific message on audio. They had a broader campaign on audiovisual, which is a bit more brand-led, but the very specific message on audio was a direct call to action.
Right.
Go to a landing page. There's a particular offer in that case. And we're able to distinctly isolate the impact of audio on website traffic through regression analysis.
Okay.
And it had that kind of effect. So it's a little bit more clunky with attribution with offline. Yeah. It is not as simple as digital, but then digital isn't telling the whole picture, as we all know.
Yeah, yeah. And Jill, from the perspective of TV, I mean, Ciarán kind of touched on it there, it might be more immediate, but yet is it,
Well, I think that's the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
So, because it operates on both levels, as we know. And we did actually a similar study to Ciarán a couple of years ago, I think with the same organisation, same thing, kind of trying to attribute website visits with the ads. And we did find that while you see an immediate impact, it also can be delayed by a couple of days. So it's, I suppose, people, very similar to the same findings as audio, people don't necessarily act immediately. And we know that. That's not how advertising works. That's one way that advertising works, but it's not the only way. It's all about people just getting that into their heads, and it's that mental availability that we all hear about, and it's the combination of the media that really helps to build that. So attributions are notoriously really, really tricky. TV, we know, works long-term and short-term. And the attributions of that are easier if you're tracking websites. Yeah. Just because it's kind of, the data's there, so you can make assumptions. But I think just using that as a metric is not telling the whole story at all.
Probably some of the larger brands might have the luxury maybe of having many things and being able to look at that. I think for smaller brands, probably it's hard. It is even harder. I mean, even probably you might see it on the, outdoor advertising. Maybe smaller brands find it harder to maybe justify because the measurement is harder. Yeah,
absolutely. And we have a significant investment now in play for the Joint National Outdoor Research, which is great because we had to put it on hold during COVID. As you can imagine, hard 2 years between 2020 and 2022. So that'll deliver audience measurement for out of home, and it'll give those smaller brands the reach and frequency that they need to justify their spends. But I think the onus is on us all as we talk about all of the different channels, and it's great to hear the research that's been undergone, because we do need to, I suppose, put ourselves up to the digital metrics, which aren't always correct or transparent in that ways. Yeah, and I guess are the metrics fit for purpose? Is there any radical overhaul required, do you think, or we kind of just need to evolve it? I think that there's a perception that digital and social have this effectiveness. And, the perception is one thing, but also when you look to the studies and the recent work studies, what traditional media can do in those campaigns and how it can amplify reach is really important to consider as well. And Jill, we're still buying TV the same way we were 20, 30 years ago. Is that a problem?
I don't believe it is, to be honest. I think, again, it comes down to behavior and looking at the different metrics. So if you look at the digital metrics, they're very easy to understand. And that's definitely a benefit for digital, because, this is the number of people that actually looked at it or opened it. But it's not telling the whole story. It's not telling how long they saw. It's not telling how much of the ad they saw. It's missing a huge chunk of actually what the ad is supposed to be doing. Did somebody actually view that ad from beginning to end and understand what it was about? Digital metrics don't deliver that. Whereas the more, no, not traditional, I need a new word, more long-serving measurement types consider the medium and how it's consumed and how the consumer is, receiving the ads and therefore understanding them. And that's something that obviously with TV measurement, you understand how long they were viewing for. Not just was there somebody there for the first second, but was there somebody there for the entire duration of that ad? And not only that, was that person within the target audience that I am buying? And, digital media are very far behind in coming anywhere near that. But it's the ease of understanding just big numbers that has actually played to their advantage. So I would say it's really down to marketeers to start to get a very good understanding of measurement and media measurement and how it's conducted. Because if you look at really all of the people sitting around this table, we deliver measurement that's very transparent. We work as joint industry currencies where all the industry are working together. Everybody who's competing with each other understand how the measurement is done, and we all share our work with each other. So it's much more transparent, and it's designed to suit the medium and what the medium can deliver in terms of advertising. So I think measurement, while it may sound like it's old-fashioned, but it was designed around the medium itself.
Yeah.
And that's why it works. And that's why clients can understand the level of reach that they can get, real reach.
Real eyeballs. And I guess, Cassie, you touched on it before, and Jill did there, about the behaviour. I find the behaviour in the environment where, and Ciarán, you touched it well, like people are kind of maybe passively listening or actively listening. Cinema is a very interesting one because it is quite captive, as an audience, and not, but the doors are closed. But like when those ads are on in the cinema, it's a very different kind of atmosphere for a consumer to be consuming that ad. How do you think about kind of the behaviour of the consumers, when you're trying to, I guess, sell the idea of cinema advertising?
Yeah, I think we are very lucky in the sense that it's one of the few places where people do actually want to completely, forget the outside world. They're so
immersed,
totally focused. They're immersed. They actually turn off their phones. They're really in the moment. And they actually see the ads as part of the experience. They will say that they enjoy the ads. They will say, "Oh, the ads are great and they're different." And we're like, they're not. They're just that you're really focused on them. So I think that's really valuable for us. And we actually carried out NeuroInsight's research last year, and it looked at that kind of, the four kind of different aspects of the brain and how we react to things when we're in the cinema, and about the involvement that you get in the engagement. And it shows the difference, the impact that it has in terms of what people are remembering and understanding, and particularly if you're trying to get a message across to make people maybe change their behaviour or understand something, that quality of engagement is hugely important. So I think we've had obviously so we've had a very interesting few years over COVID. So we're kind of very excited now about this fact that people have gone back to cinema in force, and they're so excited about it. When you saw like the whole Barbenheimer phenomenon and all these things that are happening, that people are really, going back to a lot of those media, that they still have a real affinity with them and a real love for them. So I suppose we're trying to show just the value of that now and what that means in terms of including it in a campaign.
We touched on kind of maybe a shift back maybe to some of what we would have seen before, and even in kind of that taking time to go to the cinema. I mean, Barbie was just like queues everywhere. It was like an event. TV, I think, is coming to that as well, where there's more kind of event-based TV, which I think was lost for a long time. I mean, the shows like, I know it's a UK show, but the Trader had everybody talking, and that's kind of, we're getting back to that. I guess, any ideas of like from your perspective of why that might be, and kind of again the consumer behaviour side of things, Jill, of why we're looking forward to those moments?
I think we had the kind of emergence of the streamers, and that was a whole new shiny new object, if you like, that there was a lot of focus on. But I think actually what that did was it raised the game for everybody.
Right.
Suddenly you had a whole new tranche of competitors competing on the TV screen with very high quality production factors. And all of the broadcasters really had to raise their game, and I think they've done that. And I think we can see those moments, as you say, that kind of event TV becoming a bigger and bigger thing because people love shared experiences.
Yeah.
You know, they really love that. That's why they go to the cinema. They love that shared experience. That's why they like to sit down, watch TV, live TV, at the same time as everybody else, so that they're all experiencing it at the same time. And I think that magic of the medium has always been there. But yes, I think people are rediscovering it, probably with some new formats like The Traitor and, you know, bringing gladiators back, I think was another one that, you know, was that kind of moment of all the family sitting around. And, you know, so definitely event TV is a massive driver of live TV viewing, and something that really only linear TV at the moment is delivering and capable of delivering. So,
are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency.
Today's show is supported by the Indie List, the leader in providing you with easy access to hundreds of highly experienced marketers quickly and cost-effectively. Visit theindielist.ie to speak to the Indie List team today.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
I wanted to move on to maybe those buying the media, right? Nobody in this room, well, maybe for myself, is actually currently buying media. So are there problems with the marketing managers, the media planners, the media buyers in terms of their understanding? And Cassie, you touched on it a little bit where, you know, oh no, cinema's not a part of my plan. I was at the cinema at the weekend and I really enjoyed it. Have we a problem in kind of a generation of marketers and media planners and buyers that are too digitally focused?
I would think so. Yeah. A certain generation, I think, of people who've just grown up and they've that's all they know.
Yeah.
And they just don't realize that they're so focused on this, but that not everybody is, and that even they themselves aren't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think from our point of view, what we've really enjoyed since COVID is that because we've seen this enduring love of cinema, for example, and people going back, that we have more and more brands that are willing to try different things, really willing to try cinema maybe for the first time. And I suppose it's that idea of being a little bit brave and not just sticking to what you know. Because when we're talking about those big shared experiences and things like, you know, Barbie, things like Oppenheimer, things like Taylor Swift, her concert going on cinema, they're actual cultural moments now.
Yeah.
They're not just a TV program. They're not just a movie. It's actually a much bigger thing now. I mean, the whole country turned pink for a few months there. So I think we're asking clients, I suppose, from our point of view, is like, you know, to really take advantage of those cultural moments and get closer to them, because that's really exciting, I think, for brands to be part of the things that everybody is talking about and everybody's excited about.
Yeah. And Ciarán, your work with radio stations and the media buyers, are you finding there's a gap in understanding of what radio can deliver from media buyers and marketing managers?
I think it's changing in a positive way. There was quite an interesting piece of work by Ubiquity who looked at perception versus evidence. It was produced in the UK, I think in other countries too. So they took all the evidence in terms of effectiveness and they ranked each medium. And then they surveyed agencies and marketers.
Right.
And they compared the two ranks and they're very different. So the evidence showed broadcast type media doing very well and other types of media doing less so. But then when the agencies answered that question, it was very different. So it was a really powerful piece of research. And I think that plays to the point you made about maybe agency people, you know, an unconscious bias to their own media consumption.
Yeah.
And if you're working in media, you're going to have a different type of consumption pattern to the normal person. I do think it's coming back, though. I think audio in particular is kind of a sonic boom going on. There's lots of interesting innovations happening around streaming, around podcast, around in-game audio as well. So I think there's kind of a leaning towards it again, which is great, and I hope obviously for that to continue. I also think from a marketeer's point of view, the long and the short of it, the most important word is and, the long and the short. And actually Peter Field spoke at an event last October. As one person asked him, nobody seems to disagree with what you're saying, but they don't seem to
agree.
They don't seem to do it. And he said, why is that the case? I think a lot of it goes back to, people are under huge pressure, and marketers, they're under huge pressure to deliver short-term results. So I think from the marketing's perspective, sometimes it's difficult for them to always do what, maybe the right thing to do over the longer term. So loads of those different dynamics going on.
Yeah, and even what do you think we can do then to help marketers or media buyers to kind of
coming from that background myself, quite recently, planning for clients, there's a big education piece to be done, I think, across all of the media that are sitting here at the table today. To Cassie's point, there is an unconscious bias, I believe, in terms of the younger marketeers and planners coming in towards digital, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that it's up to us to be out and to educate and to speak to the benefits of each of the mediums. And, there's a lot of research there that we need to be presenting that they may not have to hand, especially when speaking to clients as well. And that's the ultimate goal, I think, is to deliver for your clients.
One of the things that I'd found before, kind of in a marketing role, was how do you help salespeople when you're not in the room, right? And so that's probably a dynamic here with all of you, where media, agency is in with client, and client's like, well, we believe digital is the way forward, right? And our path of least resistance, we're going to present a digital plan. What are you doing, maybe industry bodies to help kind of support them to make a better case? Because I think research and information can be overwhelming as well. I know, Aoibhinn, you're reasonably new to your role, so you're probably, it's work in progress.
It's work in progress. And to that point, there's lots to be done. But I think like events, in-person events, as you said, there's so much information that is given to a planner when they're dealing with different media owners every day. There's so much information that's coming into their inbox and that they're being presented to. So as industry bodies, it's important for us to get one clear message and one clear voice out, whether that be out of home, audio, cinema or TV. That's our role.
Yeah. And speaking of events, Jill, I know you had an event during the summer with Ciarán Nelson-Field. She did some research with you about attention on TV. I mean, there's a lot of people there. I think nearly 300 marketers and agency people were in the room. And there was a very good message. As I said to her, I think Ireland just was number one. That was the takeaway, right?
Yes, which was very pleasing.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that beforehand. Yeah, we would run quite a lot of events and try to do an event like that once a year with a big hitter like Mark Ritson or Ciarán, Roy Sutherland we've had as well, David Trott. So we do try to get those big names that will attract the clients into the room, because it is great to be able to talk directly to the clients about the medium and just help them to understand, because they've an awful lot coming at them, and it's hard to get your head around what medium will work on what occasion and how they all work together. We would spend a lot of time thinking about educating the market. We produce what we call nickable slides, which we hope the agency people can just drop into their presentations that just give a snapshot of how TV is performing and what's going on in the viewing landscape. And we also run a TV Masters, which is a free training program for clients and agencies to help them understand. But that's a lot of time and effort that needs to be put in from a client point of view and an agency point of view. So, I think the nickable slides are probably the most popular in reality. We did
That's one for you, Aoibhinn. Nickable slides.
We did do an ad land versus TV land study similar to Ubiquity, where we asked people about their viewing habits and what they thought Irish people's viewing habits were and where they sat in the middle. And it really was to demonstrate that their activity, their media consumption is very different to what we called the normal people. If we work in media, we're very interested in media.
Yeah.
We tend to always, go to the latest thing, be very on top of everything, try the latest social media, whatever's going on. But that's not normal.
No, it's not. I would agree with you.
Yeah. So I think it is important to just continually educate. And as you say, Aoibhinn, in those kind of small bite-sized pieces that people can understand, because we all have tons of information that we could throw out there, but it is very hard to understand that and grasp it and understand what it'll mean for your brand. So I think it's just that continuous education in small bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, and look, I think there's an onus on people as well to learn and be curious and try to understand it. And, I think also probably push your own beliefs. So if you are, person who just lives on your phone and you watch everything on your phone, you listen to everything on your phone, well then just try to understand that that's not everybody. And I do think that's, for me, certainly I would see that, maybe younger, that sounds like a real kind of, younger people, but it is when you're new to an industry, you make assumptions and you need to kind of challenge that. I think the people who do that can create better work. And I think that's hopefully the ambition, right? I'd love to get on to kind of maybe technology innovations for each of you. And look, Ireland's a small enough market, probably replicable size like of New Zealand maybe. Is that a problem in terms of how we can innovate in this market? Jill, you're shaking your head, so I'm going to go to you and then I'll ask everybody else.
I'm nodding my head.
Okay.
Yes.
Nodding, thank you.
It's particularly with TV research, with any research, it's incredibly expensive. And trying to, I suppose, make sure that you're moving the measurement in the right direction to capture the changing behavior. And the problem with measurement is it's always behind behavior by its very nature.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to measure what people are doing and how things are changing. So certainly from a TV perspective, we have our ongoing TV measurement as it has always been with the establishment survey and the meters in the panel homes. But we also then have a sub-panel, which is a subset of all TV households, 300 homes at the moment, that have a streaming meter installed where we can understand the viewing behaviour across all devices in the home. That's something that we will be growing that panel to 500 households this year. That just helps us to begin to understand how it all works, how the whole ecosystem works. Bringing advertising measurement into that is incredibly challenging. No market in the world has actually managed to do it right as of yet. So being able to say to a client, here is how your AV campaign performed across everything. Here's your total reach and frequency. Right now, it can't be done, and it can't be done anywhere in the world. But I would say, certainly with the TV industry, I think the radio industry is the same. There's a huge amount of sharing. So we would share with countries all over Europe and indeed further afield in what they're doing. And everybody kind of shares the different tests that we're doing to try and get to a solution for this. We're getting closer, but there's still a bit to go. And it is very, very expensive.
Ciarán, from kind of that innovation piece, what are you doing for radio?
Well, I think back to Jill's point, it is more challenging in Ireland. Just, I'm sure you know yourself from your own experience, the cost of research is not that different in, say, the UK versus Ireland, but have a much bigger population, much bigger budgets in terms of the advertising budgets are much bigger. So there is challenges there. But I do think you can still work around those challenges. You can do quite interesting things. There's a lot of work happening in audio research at the moment globally. So quite interesting work happening in Australia. So they're the first market to really bring what Jill has referred to when it comes to audio visual, to really bring a connected sense of measuring streaming, measuring live broadcast, and potentially even bringing podcast into that ecosystem, which will give a brand or an agency an overall view of total audio listening. So there are areas that all markets are looking at in terms of how potentially we can innovate in the future. Separate to that, then, we're all doing individual different pieces of research concurrently as we work through. As I mentioned, we'd researched that we launched today. We've partnered with System 1 actually and are doing some research around testing creative, because I think it's really important when it comes to audio in particular. You talked earlier about an organisation that had out of home as the initial kind of starting point for a creative process. Often when it comes to the creative process with audio, it tends to come down the end. Yeah. So we're doing some innovation with System 1. We're trying to really test on people being able to see the emotional engagement at a second by second level with audio ads, and really therefore, I suppose, raise the bar in terms of audio creative in Ireland. So lots of other initiatives going on, but lots happening around the world in the area of audio, in the area of technology and innovation when it comes to research.
saw that system one, I think it's going to be, incredible to get that information and data shared, because I do agree with you. Often it's kind of we'll write the radio ad. Although I remember Brennan Flaherty in Brando used to just adore writing radio ads, because for him it was a real point of kind of like, he was theatre of the mind, right? You see, if you can create that in a 30-second, like, you're onto something. It was almost like his manifesto would start with the radio ad. And so I don't know if we're missing that craft sometimes. And, like, again, I don't want to hark on about bygone eras, but, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Cassie, from the cinema perspective in terms of innovation, it's probably slightly harder to innovate, because the product is the product.
No, I mean, I think in terms of the research, we do a huge amount of ongoing research. Also, we track box office, we track admissions, and I suppose we're kind of unusual as well in terms of, for our campaigns, we're actually checking bums on seats. It's not ratings, it's actual numbers, which is great. But we do need to keep moving on from that as well, and and developing more insight into our audience. We track our overall audience and audience by film a lot. So that gives us a huge amount of information for future campaigns, being able to tell people this is who's most likely going to go to June 2, for example, because we've got the profile before. So I think we're always looking at new ways. We would regularly do it. It is a challenge. We are a small part of a small industry, I suppose, in terms of worldwide scales.
Yeah.
But we're always looking to do new research. So like the power of attention, NeuroInsight research that we did recently, we're always looking for other projects. Like we did a couple of years ago, we did the Happiness Project, which was looking at, the effect that cinema has on your mood, not just when you're in the cinema, but actually the whole day of anticipation.
Yeah.
So we're always looking to do new research studies. And I suppose we have a good network as well on a global scale with other cinema advertising contractors. So we just recently had a conference where we all got together and talk about nickable slides. There was no holds barred. Everybody was taking everything. So we do work on kind of working groups. Like at the moment, we're working on working groups for kind of programmatic and automation, those kind of things. So we kind of can help each other out as well, because in countries where they have a bit more money to spend, they can do huge, big projects, and we can kind of learn from that and use that as well. So that helps.
Lots of work to be done. Aoibhinn, from the outdoor perspective.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting time actually for out of home in relation to new technology, and obviously the digital formats that have come out as well. So lots of exciting work happening with automation and QR. It's coming back.
Who thought that would happen?
Not me. But it's brilliant to see. As I said, I think it's forecasted that 40% of revenue will come through digital out of home. This,
Right.
from an out of home overall perspective. So it's a really exciting time, and to see that investment going in as well. It's obviously what consumers want, but I think from a brand perspective, it makes that interaction a lot more important.
Yeah, the formats are amazing, and I do wonder, sometimes worry that sometimes we're getting a bit of a TV ad on social moment with some of the digital out of home, where it's like we've created this and then let's put it on the digital platform, when that can actually probably do a lot more.
It could, and I think that's again a job for us working with creatives, and I know that it's something that the media owners are out speaking to agencies about, is the importance of getting the creativity right for the format. And there are so many formats to do, but the power really comes from matching the creative to the format.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know, like, we're all out and about, but I don't know, sometimes you need to go and say, right, today we're doing a creative tour of this, and kind of immerse yourself in it. I remember doing that in the market, going, oh, now I understand, how these formats show up and how people might consume them, but then you have to kind of take away probably 90% of the attention I was paying to it, because I was like fully focused on this amazing format. Attention is a big topic. We've touched on a lot here. We'll just briefly, Jill, talk about the work that Ciarán did. I know we touched on it before, but just kind of the headlines for attention on TV.
Yeah, it was a super study. We worked with 200 homes, and we got 13,000 views to ads. So that was the kind of size of the study. And really what we, I suppose, learned was the level of attention to TV and BVOD is incredibly strong and very persistent. So if they start watching the ad, they continue watching it to the end. And I think that was a huge point to get across, because back to what we were just talking about in terms of the creative, it means that as a storytelling mechanism, TV will deliver that story from beginning to end. And it really kind of proved that with the graph, which was literally a straight line. If you start watching the ad, you will be there till the end. Also, the amount of attention that's paid, the active attention was so high, way up in the late 60% for both TV and BVOD. So we were really pleased with the outcome. I suppose not really surprised though, because if you are there and you're watching the medium, you are attentive. It demands that, and even if you're passively attentive, you're still getting the audio. So it is a very you kind of can't really get away from it if you're in the same room as a TV, and because of the measurement, we know that you're only paying for the ads when the people are in the room. So it's kind of lends itself very, very well to a very high attention medium. Also interesting to see how it worked in relation to other social media and the different ways that they're consumed, and the kind of high attention at the start of social media that drops off very, very quickly. And I think that goes back to the whole using the medium for what works creatively for it. If you're not branding at the start of a social media ad, you may as well not be there. Yeah. And I think that it was really important, I think, for advertisers and for all of us to understand how it's consumed and therefore what kind of creative will work best to deliver it.
Cassie, I was reading work that globally cinema is the second preferred consumer channel. Ooh, good news. That's a nickable slide. And it's known to capture attention and work for advertisers with longer purchase journeys. And they particularly called out automotive and fragrance brands, which I thought was quite specific. It was. Look, you're not going to disagree. It's a highly attentive channel for people.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows. It's like what you're saying. Everybody knows that cinema delivers attention. We've always known it. I think the great thing is now that with these kind of, improvements in research and the way you can do things, that we can really show it now and really give people proof positive that, yes, instinctively we thought that people were paying attention. Now we know that they are. And I think we've kind of looked at other ways as well of kind of extending that beyond, just being, having this message come out at you. Like, say, we've launched like Cine Game, for example, in cinema, where in Odeon cinemas, where you can actually then interact with people and play a game on the big screen against each other. So it's right. Bringing it outside the cinema environment as well, bring it beyond that. But yeah, I think, all of the research at the moment, all that intelligent research is exactly what we want to see, because it does reinforce the main selling points of cinema and what it's there for and what it can deliver. And again, as I'm saying, as part of an overall campaign, how important that is. When it is so hard to reach people, it's so hard to get them, that's a really important part of it then, to include cinema in that mix. And
maybe it goes back to the planning piece, but one of the things, if you think about cinemas where they are, you tend to walk out of a cinema and there's out of home advertising right beside you. Is there enough being done, do you think, kind of collaboratively to kind of close that gap, so it's not, when you buy, working with the media planner, they're like, well, here's your this. Is there enough work happening?
Well, I think so. And I think that comes from the specialists. That's where they come into play when working with planners as well. So knowing that there is an out of home campaign, going live, and what are you doing on cinema? And they kind of will marry them together to make sure that you're seeing the ad when you come out of the cinema. So if you've seen your visual ad, that you're coming out to see your retail ads then as well. And the interesting point on that, when we were talking about the buying behaviours, is that recently we've seen that people are spending 2.5 hours in retail malls. So that's actually increasing.
All people?
All people.
Like, it's 2.5 minutes, I'm done.
I think it's... which generation?
The younger ones.
But it's interesting because talking about that, Generation Z, they do want to get out and they do want to decrease the time that they're spending on mobile devices. The research has shown that they want to decrease it by 50%. So that means more of getting out and about, whether it's going to the cinema, looking up from their phones, which is really positive.
Yeah. Definitely, we'd like to see a bit more of that out of the phones. And I saw recently, Ciarán, for radio, Mark Ritson had something in Australia, I think last week, saying that investing 11% of your campaign budget in radio will double its effectiveness. A groundbreaking Australia. The Australians are great at this stuff, aren't they? That must have been kind of, jumping for joy when you saw that.
I certainly was. Mr. Ritson has been a long supporter of radio, and he has done over many years for good reason. And I think that research was very powerful. And, audio radio has often been used as a brand multiplier.
Yeah.
Being used with other media to try to extend that message, and you can do so very, very powerfully. And it's very much a different medium in some ways in how it's consumed, because it's a passive medium, but passive in a very powerful way, because going back to Jill's point, in fact, I think there was ThinkBox research that showed that even when somebody's in the room and they're distracted, they're still getting those audio messages.
Yeah.
It really kind of sinks home with them, and those memory structures still work. But brilliant research from the Australia, which we're very happy with.
Yeah, I was delighted when I saw it myself, actually, because I think, look, the reality is, as we've all said here, like none of these things work in isolation, and that's why I think actually having a group of people today that are across very many different long-standing channels that we've had in the market, has been wonderful. As we kind of maybe come to a close and wrap up, when you were coming in here today, was there maybe one misconception that you were like, I'd love to just break this? I'd love, when people have listened to this, a misconception that I'd love them to kind of walk away with kind of a myth bust out of the conversation today. So I'll open it to the floor if anyone wants to answer that one first.
I will go first,
Okay.
only because it was one of the first things that came to my mind, and it was about the assumption around digital effectiveness. And I suppose just to say to planners and brand planners to really look into the measurement. And I know Jill mentioned that those figures may be easier to digest, but just to have a bit more rigor around looking at the other mediums.
Brilliant. Jill?
Well, that was pretty much exactly my message too. It's really just to, I suppose, be curious about the data, try to understand where it has come from, what's behind it, and question it. So I think if more marketeers started to question the validity of the data and what's really behind it, it would serve them very well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think serve all campaigns well.
Brilliant. Cassie, any myth busting left
Can't
to
say
do?
the same thing. Yeah.
What they said.
I suppose, okay, look, from a cinema point of view, I can speak on, because I don't want to say the same thing again, as I say, but I suppose it's maybe recognising that, say, for us, obviously during COVID, we were shut down for 2 years effectively. And maybe for some clients, they haven't realised just how strong and just how much people love radio, they love TV, they love cinema, they love these mediums, and they're part of their life. And I think it's maybe recognising that, there was research done last year that showed nearly 90% of pre-pandemic cinema goers have come back to cinema. But people maybe don't realise that as much, maybe if they haven't been going as much or something like that. So I suppose maybe it is, be more curious, as you're saying, Jill, and look at it again and rethink things and just take a fresh approach again, because we've had so many changes. And I think we all need to kind of take a refresh and say, right, what, if I was starting from scratch, what is going to be the best mix of everything?
Yeah.
And yes, of course, it's going to include digital, it's going to include everything, but it's recognising the values of the other media as well, and where they can all work really close together. And I think that is one thing that I suppose, maybe when I compare with our counterparts in the UK, where they have touch points over there, it would be great if we had a better understanding of what everything adds to it. Sometimes we feel a little bit siloed almost, that we can show reach and frequency, but we can't tell you what the unique frequency or the unique reach is that we've delivered. So I think that would be great if we could move forward with more research that looks across everything and really evaluates, what the power is of combining really effectively and optimizing your campaigns.
Right. And probably needs big brands to get behind that, I think. Because again, I think that's a whole other one. We get the brands in next. Ciarán, myth busting left to do?
Well, I think for advertisers, for marketeers, it's the challenge to be provocative, I think, to everybody they're working with. I remember one example of one client I was working with, and they were very focused on very short-term activation. And we just produced this one chart to the CMO, and we actually did, and it's actually everybody in this room is included in this chart. We did a share of voice of just broadcast media, and by that we meant out of home, cinema, audiovisual and radio as a broadcast medium, and we did a share of voice with our competitors, and the share of voice had reduced dramatically compared to their total share of voice, and the brand equity scores were declining. And we're trying to say to the CMO, just reevaluate, think about what you're trying to do, because they had kind of really been sucked into a lot of short-term activation. So I think to marketers and to advertisers in particular, just to be provocative, challenge, be curious, and but challenge us, challenge us as media, and challenge us on what they are looking for from us in terms of what we can provide to them, because we're very much open to be challenged and to be provoked into doing new things that benefit them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hearing what the CEOs, CFOs are asking them and saying, like, why are we on? Why do you see the billboard? Why were we on the cinema? And, having that information. But you guys need to hear, the front line as well, because you're representing certain bodies, but you need to hear what marketers are facing every day. I think we will get marketers in to talk about this next. Do you really have us back? Maybe. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time today. Aoibhinn, Jill, Cassie and Ciarán, you're so good for coming in, talking about this. It's not easy. It's definitely not an easy landscape. I think none of you are trying to say that it is, or everything is sorted, or everything is right. But there's a journey. I think it is great to see kind of a resurgence and a balance, and maybe it's just a rebalancing of where things are at and where things are going, because they are fabulous mediums, amazing creative work. I think that's maybe a thing for creative people as well, is to think about how creative can I be, on these mediums. Like it's a phenomenal opportunity. And so thanks so much. Thanks so much to G Ready at Poddle Studios for having us in today. Really appreciate it. For me, your host, Conor Byrne, until the next episode of That's What I Call Marketing. Thanks for tuning in.
Today's show is brought to you by the Indie List CMO Collective. This service from the Indie List provides you with access to a curated range of highly experienced and talented senior marketing specialists. Visit theindielist.ie to find out more.
Are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.